The observation ship hung silent in Earth's orbit, its advanced cloaking systems making it invisible to human detection. Inside, Master Observer Reed stood before the large viewing screen, his four eyes blinking in confusion at the scene playing out below. A human was climbing down a steep cliff, risking their life to rescue what appeared to be a small, furry animal trapped on a narrow ledge. "Most peculiar," Reed muttered, making another note in his datapad. This was the 8th such incident he had witnessed today alone. Humans putting themselves in danger to save other species that weren't even their own. He turned to his assistant. "Play the water rescue footage again." The screen shifted to show a human diving into rough ocean waters to save a large marine mammal tangled in fishing nets. The human could have died, yet they didn't hesitate. Reed walked to his research station, his steps careful in the artificial gravity. Surrounding him were hundreds of similar recordings, humans creating shelters for homeless animals, healing injured wildlife, and even sharing their living spaces with creatures that served no practical purpose. "Computer, update species assessment." Reed spoke clearly. "Humans display unprecedented cross-species altruism. Initial hypothesis of food source cultivation appears incorrect. Subjects expend significant resources caring for animals that provide no clear survival benefit." He paused the latest recording, zooming in on a human child sharing their meal with a stray dog. The behavior made no logical sense. In his 1,000 years of observing developing worlds, Reed had never seen anything like it. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Reed straightened his posture and activated the holographic communication array. Council member Trill's stern face appeared before him. "Observer Reed, your latest reports are causing quite a stir," Trill said. "Are you certain about these findings?" "Absolutely, Council member. Humans regularly endanger themselves to aid other species. They create specialized medical facilities for animals. They even invite other species to live in their homes permanently, providing food and care without expecting anything in return." "Impossible," Trill replied. "No species develops such behavior naturally. There must be some hidden benefit we're not seeing." Reed gestured to his data wall. "I've been studying them for 3 cycles now. They call it adoption. Taking in creatures that are not their own and treating them as family. They even do this with their own species, raising offspring that don't share their genetic material." The council member's expression showed clear disbelief. "Perhaps they're conducting long-term biological research." "No, council member. The behavior appears universal across their culture. Even their young display it. Watch this." Reed played a recording of a small human creating a shelter for insects during a rainstorm. "Fascinating and disturbing," Trill said. "What are your recommendations?" Reed had been waiting for this question. "I request permission to establish a closer observation post. There's something unique about human psychology that we don't understand. This could revolutionize our understanding of species development." "Granted," Trill replied after a moment's consideration, "but maintain strict non-interference protocols. If humans are truly this unusual, we need to study them carefully before making any contact decisions." After the transmission ended, Reed returned to the viewing screen. Below, a new scene was unfolding. A human organization was rescuing hundreds of animals from a natural disaster area, using their own vehicles and resources to move them to safety. "Computer, begin new research log," Reed said quietly. Title: "The Species That Adopts." I believe we may have discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that has evolved to care for others simply because they can. He watched as more humans joined the rescue effort below, working together to save creatures that weren't their own. Perhaps, he thought, this was why the Council had never detected signs of human space travel. They were too busy taking care of every other species on their planet to look up at the stars. The new observation post was hidden beneath a small hill outside a human city. Reed sat in his monitoring chamber, surrounded by screens showing different human activities. His team had grown to include 3 other researchers, all equally fascinated by human behavior. "Look at this one," Observer Tom called out, gesturing to his screen. A human was bottle-feeding a baby animal that clearly wasn't their species. The small creature had been injured, and instead of leaving it to nature's course, the human had taken it home. Reed moved closer to study the scene. "Add it to the adoption database." That's the 5th case today. Their research had expanded beyond simple observation. They had cameras in animal hospitals, rescue centers, and homes where humans kept their pets. The amount of resources humans devoted to other species was staggering. An alert flashed on the main screen. Another human was stopping traffic on a busy road, risking their safety to help a family of ducks cross. The other humans in their vehicles waited patiently, some even smiling at the scene. "I still don't understand," Observer Lynn said, shaking her head. "They do this everywhere, all the time. Yesterday, I watched a human organization spend thousands of their currency units to save one injured bird." Reed was about to respond when their emergency scanner picked up a signal. A large fire had broken out in one of the human cities. The team watched as humans rushed into the burning building, not just to save other humans, but to rescue the animals trapped inside. "Record everything," Reed ordered. "The council won't believe this." They observed as firefighters passed pets through windows, gave oxygen to smoke-affected animals, and even set up a temporary medical station for both humans and animals. The locals brought blankets, food, and opened their homes to those who had lost everything, regardless of species. Later that night, Reed prepared his report for the council. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans didn't just help other species occasionally. It was deeply embedded in their culture. They had laws protecting animals, organizations dedicated to wildlife preservation, and even celebrated their relationships with other species through something called social media. Breaking news: the human broadcast caught his attention. A whale had beached itself on their shore. Reed expected them to see it as an easy food source. Instead, hundreds of humans were gathering to help push it back into the ocean. They worked for hours, keeping the whale wet, bringing specialists to check its health, and finally celebrating together when it swam away. Many of them were crying with joy. "Send this to the council too," Reed told his team. "They need to see all of it." The response from the council came faster than expected. They were both alarmed and intrigued. No known species had evolved this way. Some council members worried it might be a sign of weakness. Others saw it as a potential threat to the galactic order. "Continue monitoring," the council's message read. "We need to understand the full extent of this behavior before making any decisions about Earth's status." Reed looked at his wall of data. Humans running animal shelters, creating wildlife preserves, passing laws against animal cruelty, developing medical treatments for other species. The evidence kept growing. "Maybe," he said to his team, "we're not studying a primitive species after all. Maybe we're watching the evolution of something we've never seen before, a species that measures its success not by what it takes, but by what it gives." The screens around them continued to show scenes of human compassion. A child sharing their lunch with a stray cat, an elderly human walking dogs from a shelter, a group of humans building homes for wild birds. "Keep watching," Reed told his team. "Something tells me we've only scratched the surface of what humans are capable of." The emergency alarm blared through the observation post, waking Reed from his rest cycle. He rushed to the main control room, where his team was already gathered around the central display. A massive ship had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its engines were failing, leaving trails of radiation in space. The ship's hull showed heavy damage from weapons fire. Emergency beacons broadcasted distress signals in multiple galactic languages. "It's a refugee ship," Observer Lynn said, her voice tight with concern. "From the Outer Rim war zone." Reed quickly accessed the Galactic Communication Network. The nearest advanced worlds were already aware of the ship. One by one, they sent their responses. "No resources to spare." "Too risky." "Not our problem." "Security concerns." The ship carried over 2,000 refugees, including hundreds of children. Their life support systems were failing. They had enough power for perhaps 3 more days. "They're going to die," Observer Tom whispered. Then something unexpected happened. Earth's primitive detection systems picked up the ship's presence. Reed watched as humans across the planet began responding to what they called an unknown object in space. "Look at their communication channels," Lynn said in amazement. Humans were already organizing. Scientists worked to understand the signals. Military leaders discussed rescue options. Regular citizens took to their media platforms, overwhelmingly demanding their governments help whoever was on the mysterious ship. "But they don't even know who's up there," Tom said. "It could be dangerous." Reed watched as human space agencies around the world began working together. They had no ships capable of reaching the refugee vessel, but that didn't stop them from trying to find solutions. Then the refugees sent out images of their children. Somehow, these reached Earth's networks. The response was immediate and overwhelming. "We have to help them. They have children. No one deserves to die like that." The human messages flooded communication channels. Within hours, every major nation on Earth had pledged support. They began converting sports stadiums into emergency shelters. Hospitals prepared for unknown medical needs. Regular citizens offered their homes, brought supplies, and volunteered their time. All for aliens they had never seen. "Sir," Lynn called out urgently, "the humans are broadcasting a message into space, in every language they know." Reed listened as the simple message repeated, "Hold on. We're coming. You're not alone." The humans' primitive space stations began changing their orbits, trying to create a chain to relay messages better. Their scientists worked nonstop to understand the alien technology. Engineers tried to adapt their rockets for rescue missions, despite the impossible technological gap. "They can't actually help," Tom said. "They don't have the technology." "Look again," Reed replied, pointing to his screen. Humans were lighting up their cities at night in patterns, creating massive signals visible from space. They were using their radar dishes to send messages of hope. Children were making welcome signs in dozens of languages. The refugee ship picked up these efforts. Their response was weak but clear. "We see you." Reed's emergency communicator buzzed. The Galactic Council was calling an emergency session. They had also been watching the humans' response. "Sir," Lynn said softly, "I think I finally understand what makes them different. They don't ask if they can help or if they should help. They just help." Reed nodded, still watching the screens as humans around the world mobilized for an impossible rescue mission. "Send all this to the Council," he ordered. "They need to see what happens when you show humans a creature in need, even if that creature comes from the stars." His team worked quickly, knowing they were watching history unfold. Below them, humanity prepared to welcome strangers from the stars, not with weapons or fear, but with open arms and compassion. The world changed in 3 days. Reed watched from the observation post as humans transformed their largest buildings into shelter spaces. They worked without rest, preparing for guests they had never met. Dr. Blake from the city's main hospital stood before a group of medical professionals. "We don't know what they'll look like," she told them. "We don't know their biology. But they need help, and that's what we do." All around the world, similar scenes played out. Universities opened their doors. Hotels emptied their rooms. Regular people brought blankets, food, and supplies to collection centers. Children drew welcome pictures with crayon drawings of stars and spaceships. "The Council is watching all of this," Observer Lynn reported. "They can't believe what they're seeing." The refugee ship grew closer. Its engines had completely failed now, and it was falling toward Earth using only emergency thrusters. The humans tracked its descent with their primitive radar systems, calculating where it might land. In a small town near the predicted landing zone, locals transformed their high school gym into an emergency center. They brought in beds, set up cooking stations, and gathered medical supplies. Nobody complained about the inconvenience. Instead, they worked harder. My house has 2 spare rooms, one human told the local news. They're welcome to stay as long as they need. Reed's monitors picked up a transmission from the refugee ship. Their life support systems were almost gone. The ship's captain, an old warrior named Vale, sent what he thought would be his final message. To the people of Earth, thank you for trying. At least we won't die alone. The response from Earth was immediate. Millions of humans gathered in open spaces, holding lights up to the sky. Mountains of supplies appeared at collection points. Medical teams stood ready at every possible landing site. Look at this, Observer Tom called out. A group of human children had broken into their piggy banks, bringing their saved money to help buy supplies. Others had gathered their favorite toys to give away. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere at night. It was a spectacular sight, a massive vessel trailing fire across the sky. Instead of running away, humans ran toward the predicted landing zone. Emergency teams were ready when the ship touched down in an empty field. The landing was rough but controlled. As the dust settled, humans approached slowly, their hands raised to show they carried no weapons. The ship's main door opened with a hiss of steam. Vale stepped out, supporting a young refugee child. He looked at the gathered humans with all 4 of his eyes, expecting fear or hostility. Instead, a human child walked forward and offered him a stuffed toy animal. "Welcome to Earth," the child said simply. That broke the tension. Humans rushed forward to help the weakened refugees. Medical teams began treating the injured. Food and water appeared. Blankets were wrapped around shivering alien shoulders. Reed watched as humans who had never seen an alien before helped carry refugee children to waiting transport vehicles. They didn't hesitate at strange appearances or unusual numbers of limbs. They simply helped. "Sir," Lynn said, checking her monitors. "The council is calling an emergency session. This changes everything they thought they knew about first contact protocols." Reed nodded, still watching the scenes below. A human family was showing a group of refugee children how to play with a ball. Another was teaching alien parents how to use simple Earth tools. Everywhere he looked, humans were finding ways to communicate, to help, to welcome. "Send them everything," he ordered. "The council needs to understand. Humans don't just take in strays. They make them family. And today, their family just got bigger than anyone expected." Vale, the refugee captain, summed it up best in his first official message to Earth's leaders. "We came here expecting to die among strangers. Instead, we found a home among friends." News spread quickly through the galaxy. The refugee ship's distress signals had been ignored by dozens of advanced worlds, yet a primitive planet had welcomed them without hesitation. The story was everywhere, impossible to ignore. Reed stood before the Galactic Council, his research screens floating around him. The council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all eager to understand what had happened on Earth. "Show us again," Council Member Trill demanded. "Show us how they responded." Reed played the recordings. Humans converting their buildings into homes for aliens, children sharing their toys with refugee youngsters, doctors working day and night to understand alien biology, regular people opening their homes to complete strangers from the stars. "But what do they want in return?" another council member asked. "Nothing," Reed replied. "They expect nothing in return. They help because they can." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some called it a trick, others a sign of weakness. But more and more voices spoke of shame. Shame that their advanced worlds had turned away the refugees while Earth had stepped forward. On the main screen, new images appeared from Earth. Human children were teaching refugee children their games. Adults were helping the aliens learn Earth's languages. Families were adopting refugee families, showing them how to live on their new world. "We've received messages from 17 worlds," Observer Lynn reported through Reed's communicator. "They're changing their refugee policies. Some are even starting their own adoption programs." Reed shared this news with the council. The effect rippled through the chamber like a wave. Worlds that had always closed their borders were suddenly talking about opening them. Species that had never mixed were considering new possibilities. Back on Earth, something remarkable was happening. The refugees were sharing their knowledge with humans. Advanced medical techniques, new technologies, educational systems, freely given in gratitude. But the humans shared just as freely in return their music, their art, their stories, their way of seeing the universe. "Look at this," Reed told the council, showing them a new image. A human family and a refugee family had moved in together, sharing a house, helping raise each other's children. It wasn't an isolated case. It was happening all over Earth. "They don't just take them in," Reed explained. "They make them part of their families. And now those families are teaching others to do the same." The council watched as more images came in. Other worlds were changing. A space station that had always been closed to refugees now offered shelter. A trading post became a meeting place for different species. A mining colony converted its spare quarters into homes for the displaced. "Earth has become a symbol," Council Member Trill said quietly. "They've shown us what we could be." Reed nodded, watching his screens. Earth was still primitive in many ways, but they had mastered something that the advanced worlds had forgotten, or perhaps had never known. The simple act of helping others, of taking in strays, was changing the galaxy. "We've received another 100 applications," Lynn reported. "More worlds want to start refugee programs. They're calling it the Earth Model." In the council chamber, a vote was called. For the first time in galactic history, they would create laws protecting refugees, ensuring that no ship would ever again drift helplessly, ignored by those who could help. "Perhaps," Reed told them, "we should admit that in this one thing, we are the primitive ones. Earth has taught us what it means to be truly advanced." The council agreed. As the new laws were passed, screens showed more images from Earth. Humans and aliens building a new life together, one act of kindness at a time. 3 months after the refugee ship landed, Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humans worked alongside their alien neighbors, learning and teaching in equal measure. But the biggest changes were happening far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Reed watched from his newly official observation post as another ship entered Earth's orbit. This one wasn't damaged or in distress. It carried teachers, scientists, and medical experts from across the galaxy, all coming to study what humans called community. "The waiting list keeps growing," Observer Lynn reported. 50 more worlds want to send representatives to Earth. They all want to learn how humans do it. Down on the surface, the changes were everywhere. Human doctors worked with alien healers, combining their knowledge to cure diseases that had once been hopeless. Engineers from both worlds collaborated on new technologies. But most importantly, people from different worlds were becoming friends, neighbors, and family. In one small town, a human teacher named Jim had started what he called unity classes. Humans and aliens sat together, learning each other's languages, customs, and stories. Children played together in the playground, not caring about different numbers of eyes or arms. "Watch this," Reed told his team, pointing to his screen. A group of alien children had gotten lost during a school trip. Instead of being scared, they walked up to the first human they saw and asked for help. The human immediately stopped what they were doing and helped them find their way back. "It's becoming normal," Observer Tom said in amazement. "They don't even think about it anymore." The refugee crisis that had started it all was ending. Other worlds, inspired by Earth's example, had opened their doors. Ships that would once have drifted helplessly now had dozens of worlds offering shelter. The galaxy was changing, one act of kindness at a time. In the original refugee camp, now transformed into a thriving community center, Vale spoke to a group of visitors from another star system. "We thought we were coming here to die," he told them. "Instead, we learned how to truly live." The Galactic Council had changed too. They no longer debated whether to help others. Now they debated how best to help. Earth's example had shifted the entire conversation. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground in their desire to be more like humans. Reed received a new message from the Council. They wanted to officially recognize Earth as a teaching world, a place where others could learn values essential to galactic civilization. It was an honor usually reserved for worlds with millions of years of history. But we're not teaching them technology or science, a human leader said when Reed delivered the news. We're just being ourselves. That, Reed realized, was exactly the point. Humans hadn't needed thousands of years to learn compassion. They hadn't needed advanced technology to understand kindness. They had simply done what came naturally to them, helping others, taking in strays, making family out of strangers. In orbit, another ship arrived. This one carried families from a distant world who wanted to learn Earth's way of life. They didn't come as refugees or students, but as neighbors hoping to understand how humans had mastered the art of caring. Look at the changes in just 3 months, Lynn said, showing Reed her data. Crime rates had dropped across the galaxy. Wars had decreased. Trade had increased. Species that had never cooperated were working together, all because one primitive planet had shown them a better way. Reed smiled as he watched a human child teaching an alien child how to fly a kite. The galaxy had always measured advancement by technology, by conquest, by power. Earth had shown them a different kind of advancement, one measured in acts of kindness, in hands offered in friendship, in hearts open to strangers. 5 years had passed since the refugee ship first landed on Earth. Reed stood at his favorite observation spot, now a proper diplomatic office with a clear view of the changed world below. The same field where the refugees had landed was now home to the galaxy's first interspecies community center. The final report is ready, Observer Lynn said, joining him at the window. She had stayed with him all these years, watching humanity reshape the galaxy's understanding of civilization. Reed looked down at the scene below. Human and alien children played together in the center's playground. Their parents sat nearby, sharing meals and stories. Nobody noticed or cared about their differences anymore. Remember when we first started watching them? Reed asked. We thought they were primitive because they spent so much time helping animals. Now we know that's what made them advanced, Lynn replied. They had mastered something the rest of us had missed. The latest numbers showed the change clearly. Over 300 worlds had adopted Earth's approach to community and family. The old refugee crisis had ended as planets competed to welcome those in need. Wars had dropped to their lowest levels in galactic history. In the city nearby, a new family was moving in. A human couple was helping an alien family carry their belongings into the house next door. Their children were already playing together in the yard, figuring out how to throw a ball with different numbers of arms. The council wants to know if we're ready to close the observation post, Lynn said. They think we've learned everything we can. Reed shook his head, pointing to his screens. A new rescue operation was underway in a distant part of the galaxy. A ship had found a damaged space station, and instead of passing by, they had stopped to help. The rescue crew was using techniques they had learned from Earth. We're still learning, he said. Every day, they show us something new. On his main screen, images from across the galaxy played one after another. A trading post where different species shared meals together. A school where children from a dozen worlds learned side by side. A hospital where doctors of every species worked together, sharing their knowledge freely. Did you see the latest adoption numbers? Lynn asked, pulling up the data. Families across the galaxy were following Earth's example, taking in children who needed homes, regardless of their species. Vale, the old refugee captain, now served on the Galactic Council. His latest speech had moved many to tears. We came to Earth thinking we were the advanced ones, he had said. We had technology, we had power, we had knowledge. But they had wisdom. They knew that the true measure of advancement is not what you can take, but what you can give. Reed's grandson. Yes, he had a human grandson now, adopted by his own daughter who had fallen in love with Earth's ways, came running into the office. The boy had his mother's silver skin and his human father's bright eyes. Grandpa, the boy called out, come see. The new family next door has kids from 3 different worlds. Reed smiled. remembering how shocked he had been years ago when he first saw humans caring for other species. Now his own family was living proof of how far things had come. "The final report can wait," he told Lynn. "I think we still have more to learn." Together, they watched the sun set over the changed Earth. In the growing dark, lights came on in millions of homes. In those homes, families of every shape, size, and origin shared their evening meals. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some had fur, some had scales. But they all had one thing in common. They had learned from humanity that family wasn't about what you looked like or where you came from. It was about love, plain and simple, just like caring for a stray.